I love chords, and today we're going to be talking about the book that inspired most of those voicings. So as a teenager growing up in a small town in the middle of nowhere, there were no guitar teachers to help me. And of course there was no internet, so we relied on books to learn. And one of the books that we got was this one, 7,488 Guitar Chords. Seems pretty overwhelming, really. And even if you divide by 12, because it was the same chords for every key, it leaves over 600 chords. Yikes. As I became interested in jazz, I got this book. Well, I got it, but I didn't get it. It had 23 pages. And the chords didn't even have names, and how could all these chords with different notes be the same chord? I was really confused. It took me a few years to figure out this book. First, I figured out the chords and then figured out which notes were in the melody. But it wasn't until quite a bit later that I really understood it was a window into the mind of one of the all-time great jazz guitarists, Joe Pass. And once I got it, it made everything a lot simpler. There's not a lot of written explanations in the book. So in this video, I'll share 6 concepts that are key to understanding Joe's approach to chords. The first concept is that Joe only thinks in 6 chord types. 7,488 guitar chords had 34 types. That makes my head spin. I generally think in terms of 9 7th chord types. But by combining a few, Joe makes it even simpler with just 6. You're going to think of these as being the primary colors. There are about 20 to 30 voicings for each type, and all of them are either in C major or C minor. The first type, of course, is major, and that would include major 7th chords, major 6th chords, and major 7 sharp 11 or 6 9s. The dominant 7th chords include dominant 7ths and altered dominant 7ths, along with the sus4 chord. His third type is augmented chords, and this even includes a few triads. Now, for the most part, he's going to be using these as a 5-chord in minor, so it's really kind of an altered dominant. In the book, the minor chords are all C minor chords, so I think he's thinking 1 in the minor key. But oddly enough, he doesn't include any voicings for minor 6 or minor major 7th chords. The 5th category is diminished chords. Now, the diminished chords' roots are really kind of difficult to decipher because, as you probably know, any of the 4 notes can be the root, and so it really depends on the context. In the last category, minor 7 flat 5 chords, and he treats those as being D minor 7 flat 5, the 2 chord in C minor. The second key concept is that tensions don't change the chord type. All of these voicings use available tensions, but they're really just different shades of the primary colors. And that's not to say he didn't know what specific chord he was playing, it's just how he thought about it. So with major 7th chords, he's got 9s, he's got sharp 11s, and 13s. On the dominant 7th chords, you'll find natural tensions, you'll find altered tensions. And, as I mentioned, the sus4 also. Now, he uses standard available tensions, and he doesn't include any avoid notes. There is one tension that was a little different, and that is adding the flat 6 on the minor 7 flat 5. Diminished chords can replace any chord tone with a note either a whole step above or a half step below a chord tone. So you can take this common diminished chord, lower the note on the first string 1 fret, and you end up with this voicing. But as you can see, that looks very much like just a drop 2 G7 chord. Our third concept is you don't need the root. Now, as a solo guitarist, you might expect Joe's voicings to all have roots, but he in fact plays an awful lot of drop two voicings without the root in the bass, and some voicings without the root at all. The thing is you just don't miss it, because it's all about context. Joe is a master at making us hear things that he wasn't actually playing. Now, our fourth concept is that the voicings don't actually have to be complete. When I was at Berkeley, I was taught that you had to have a third and a seventh in your voicing. Joe doesn't really see it that way. Quite a few of the voicings are missing the third or the seventh. On major chords, he'll replace the third with a ninth or with a sharp 11. And on minor chords, he often replaces the third with an 11th. And he'll do that on minor 7 flat 5 chords too. Again, it probably all comes down to context. If he's already played another voicing that's more complete, when he plays an incomplete voicing, it'll sound just fine. The fifth thing to understand is that most of these fingerings are pretty easy to play. There's not a lot of huge stretches, and there are not a lot of, to smash your fingers in between strings. It's all pretty easy to grab, and that's because Joe said he didn't like to play hard chords because then he couldn't swing. Now, there are a few in here that are kind of tough to grab, but you don't have to do that. One of the things you can do is just simply break them up or just drop out a note. Remember, swing is king. The last concept to understand is that many of these voicings have more than one name. It's an important concept, and it's probably the most difficult to grasp. But once you get it, it makes comping a lot easier. So for example, this chord is listed as a major chord on the 2nd fret, but it's also a major chord on the 7th fret. And this chord is listed as a 7th chord, a dominant chord, really a sus4 chord on the 3rd fret, and then an incomplete major chord on the 10th fret. And then this dominant chord on the 3rd fret is a G7 altered, and here it's a G7 not altered. So it's all about context. Which chord it actually is depends on how you're thinking about it and the chords before and after. Now, Joe Pass would say he didn't know much music theory, but there's a lot here, and it's pretty deep, actually. He didn't study formal theory, but he knew it intuitively, and he had his own way of describing it. It was more practical than theoretical. But you can see the end result is much simpler. Making jazz guitars simpler so that you can start playing jazz as quickly as possible is what Jumpstart Jazz Guitar is all about. If you know bar chords and pentatonic scales, you can start playing jazz right away. You work at your own pace and at your convenience, and you get unlimited video feedback from me. Click the link below to book a free trial lesson. Now, the best part about this book is it's not just an info dump. The second half is devoted to showing you how he uses these chords. First, he uses diagrams to show how he embellishes each chord, cycling through different voicings before resolving to another chord. When you're looking at these, pay close attention to the melody note because Joe's thinking about that a lot, and you can use that to help transpose these to other keys. The last section is common chord progressions and the substitutions he used. You should start these with chords with a root on the 5th string, and then again with chords with roots on the 6th string. Eventually, you'll want to be able to play them in all keys. Now, these are shown as chord symbols, which can be a little challenging since there are no chord labels in the book. And if you need help sorting these out, check out this video.